Hello, annyeonghaseyo, goeiedag. My name is Sang-ho, I'm the CEO of Cryptopia and I welcome you to CryptopiaCast. Here we discover the latest trends in crypto space and the people behind them. By the way, if you do not know Cryptopia, we are an upcoming blockchain game that stands out by design choices. We are free to earn, 100% decentralized, and most of all, fun to play. Are you ready to dive into the wonderful world of crypto, NFTs and games? Then please join me. Today it is my honor to be the host of the CryptopiaCast, and my first guest is Vince Warnock. He is an author, an ex-radio announcer, founder of several startups, and now running his own shows, Chasing the Insights and NFT Ninjas. But before we start the show, I need to warn you. This is my first time hosting a show, and of course several things went wrong. I forgot that my recording software was recording my whole screen and not just me in front of the camera. So my notes were in view, and even worse, my notes were partly covering the head of my guest, so not a pretty nice sight. Also, I got a call. I disabled the notifications, everything, but still Skype came through and rang me while doing the podcast. Why am I telling you this? Well, it fits perfectly with the theme and the topics I discussed with Vince. We talked about doing new things, doing things you've never done before, not being afraid to make mistakes, not being afraid to show the mistakes. We talked about the imposter syndrome, so that is that you have the feeling that you are not skilled enough or that other people think you are not and will sort of expose you as a fraud. All these topics we covered, and it was really nice to talk about it. So I thought, well, I can change this podcast into an audio podcast only. But why? I this is my first time. I'm not afraid to show my mistakes, and I thought it doesn't have to be perfect. I'll just leave it in. So you will see my show notes on top of Vince's head. Sorry, Vince. But it's just only for like a minute or so, and I left it in. With that out of the way, let's get ready for the podcast with Vince. It was a very exciting talk with him. We talked about writing because he's an author. We talked about ninjas. He's not a ninja. Well, at least he did not disclose it to me, but maybe he is. I don't know. We talked about NFTs, of course. And we talked about yoga and about mindsets. And of course about his podcast. So let's get ready. Enjoy the show. So here we are with my first guest of my podcast career, Vince Warnock. Vince, welcome to Cryptopia. How are you?
Oh my goodness, I'm so happy to be here, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, great. I just introduced you as a very versatile man. You do a lot of things, have a broad interest. We narrowed down some topics to talk about today. Otherwise, the podcast would run for 10 hours if we want to cover all. So let's start with NFTs. You are also hosting the Christmas Ninja NFT project. It's a bit early for Christmas. Well, not for the Philippines, but I understand that they are already gearing up for Christmas in September, October. But the rest of the world, it's far away. So ninjas and Christmas, what is it? Where does the name come from?
It actually came from long before NFTs, man. Like honestly, 15 years ago, it was about 15 years ago when my son was 4. Okay. He's our youngest. We tried to tell him about Santa Claus, and he just looked at me with this look of, are you an idiot? Like he just looked at me and said, I'm never going to fall for that. And I went, okay. So we had to tell him the truth. So I turned around and said to him, look, Santa Claus isn't real. You can't tell your friends. It's just something that parents and Coca-Cola made up so that you'd behave yourself, And from that, he then turned around and said the coolest thing I think I've ever heard come out of a 4-year-old's mouth. He just turned around and said, look, Dad, if you're going to make up stories, make them interesting and put ninjas in them. And I was like, yes, 100% yes.
Cool.
But it also started something else. Yeah, so it made me really uncomfortable to say to him that, if you behave yourself, then you'll be rewarded. This is something that we don't just do to kids as well. We do this around Christmas. We say to kids, if you behave yourself, which means, do as you're told, like do as your parents, your teachers, your employers, your leaders tell you, then you will be on the nice list, or you won't upset the elf on the shelf, or whatever. But also we do this in corporate life as well. I've seen it in every corporate job I've had, where if you toe the line, if you do what your leaders tell you, you do what's expected of you, you'll get a raise, you'll get a bonus.
Yeah.
And I kind of realized I'm a proud dad of 2 kids. I want so much more for them than just to do what they're told.
Yeah.
So we wrote the Christmas Ninja story together, and that was our family thing. So we wrote a story which combined all of the Christmas traditions. You had little baby Jesus in the manger, you got the wise men coming down, then you've got the Christmas Ninja stealthily following them. And when she gets to the manger, her job is simple. She has to protect baby Jesus from an assassination attempt from Santa and his evil ninja elf clan.
Wow.
So long story short, man, massive battle. Santa and the elves get defeated. They get banished to the North Pole. And as penance, once a year, they have to deliver presents to all the kids.
Wow.
But then the Christmas Ninja embarks on her new mission. And that is her journey across the land to look for people that demonstrate the best in humanity. And this is the traits of the Christmas Ninja. So that is honor, that is respect, courage, compassion, and self-sacrifice.
Oh, wow.
And when she finds people that demonstrates this, she deems them worthy. She bestows upon them a gift, and they become a Christmas Ninja themselves.
Okay.
So that was the story we wrote, but it was also the birth of our family tradition. So every year we would pick a person each that we think demonstrates those behaviors, that brings out the best in humanity. We would get them a little anonymous gift from the Christmas Ninja. It'll have the story in there as well. And on Christmas Day, we have to get up. We're allowed to open one present each. And then we have to race out and deliver these gifts without getting seen. And honestly, it is the most amount of fun I think we've ever had as a family.
That's amazing.
The kids got really into it, man. My daughter's like commando crawling under hedges. I'm climbing 3-story buildings to put it on a balcony, all these kind of things. But fast forward 15 years later, and one of the things we discovered was a whole pile of people had started to take up this tradition themselves. Like I'm based here in New Zealand. We would bump into people who said, "Oh, I got this gift from a Christmas Ninja," and you're like, then you realize, I don't know who you are. Like I've never met you before, which means somebody else has taken this up and run with it. And since then, we've discovered people in the US and Canada, the UK, South Africa that have been deemed worthy of this Christmas Ninja.
Great.
So that got me thinking, if we can inspire a small amount of change in people, then I need to put this book out there. And one of the things that I discovered is, yes, I wrote the book, but I then tried to do artwork. And if you've ever seen my artwork, you would know that it's not a pretty sight. So, so I teamed up with this beautiful artist out of Australia and said to her, look, I want to bring this book to life. And she was asking me about the purpose behind the book and everything. I told her it was to inspire people. And then the two of us just put our brains together. We realized we're both really passionate about social change. And we thought, well, why stop at a book? Why don't we create an NFT series that actually rewires your brain? And what I mean by this is every Christmas Ninja that you hold, you're going to get multiple times a year. You're going to get airdropped, which basically just means we're going to give you for free a companion NFT for you to give to someone to recognize and reward them for being an amazing human being. And the reason for this is we actually took some time to look back at the effect that this family tradition has had on me and my family. And over 15 years of constantly doing this, we realized our outlook towards other people has shifted. And it makes sense. When you understand neuroscience, you understand that, your brain has this giant filter system, this thing called the reticular activating system. And basically its job is to go, I'm bombarded every minute of every day by all these inputs, right? By all these senses, every sight, every sound, every taste, everything. So all of this is bombarding your brain. So your brain's got to go, okay, which of this information is important to me? Which of this information is important for my survival or my thriving? And when it finds that information, it passes it through to your brain. So here's what happens over 15 years. When you're constantly and consistently looking for the best in other people, then your brain goes, hey, this is relevant information for me. So I'm going to show you the best. I'm going to show you the potential. I'm going to show you the goodness in every single person. And here's the kicker, not just the people that you like, not just the people that are in your sphere or that you agree with, but people that you may have a different religion to or a different political belief to or a different ideology. Like we're going to show you the good in everyone. And that really has shifted our perspective on people. And we thought, we want that for others. So that's where the kind of Christmas element of the project came. And then we realized we are onto something here, because the more people we talked to about this, they resonated with it. So we knew we can't do it alone. We had to form a team. We put together a really solid, talented, what we call a talented IRL team. So a talented in real life team. They had to have business acumen. Most of our founding team have their own businesses. One of them is a corporate lawyer who worked with top brands. I'm not allowed to name the brands or she'll kill me. Top brands at litigation, and got sick of that whole industry and decided to move out and do something passionate like this. And we've got other marketers in there, including myself. I mean, my background, I have over 30 years, I think it is, in marketing. I was previously the chief marketing officer at Cigna Insurance, which is a Fortune 100 company. And prior to that, I've created and sold a number of different businesses. And in that time, I've become a published author. I've got multiple books. I've also been recognized by Adobe as one of the top 50 marketers in the world. So we knew that we had the team that could actually execute on this. The other thing we wanted to do was, you will notice if you see our team, if anyone goes to our website, I'm the only guy in our founding team, and that is by design. Good. We realized that women are highly underrepresented in NFTs, so we wanted to be part of the change for that as well. So that's kind of where it came from, and from there we've kind of developed it out even more. We've got so much real life elements to our utility and our roadmap, and some really, really exciting storylines. Some of them I wish I could tell you. Honestly, I feel like if I even start to tell you, there's going to be a red dot on my forehead from the snipers. But there's some really exciting stuff coming up.
Cool. And what was prior to the NFTs, right? Because that's the only reason to development. But I think you played with the idea to do something more, just the storyline. So what other possibilities did you consider apart from NFTs, like physical objects or badges or?
Oh yeah, like we I mean, as part of NFTs were where I really wanted to start, and the part of the reason for that is at Cigna Insurance, and even in some of my previous companies, we've been doing some really cutting edge stuff technology wise. We've been working on some really cutting edge AI projects, blockchain projects, some really creative kind of solutions with some of my previous companies. And I'm really passionate about that. I'm a giant nerd. I can't help it. I love technology. I love geeky stuff. I love Star Wars and Marvel.
We see behind you.
But so when I came into this kind of world, when I left Cigna and moved on from there, the idea was I wanted to get back to where I'm helping people, and this was entrepreneurs, because I have such a soft spot for entrepreneurs because I'm a giant entrepreneur myself. So I started helping them to market themselves, helping them to get visibility. But then I started realizing I'm still passionate about this stuff. So how can I use things like blockchain technology to serve my clients, to serve the entrepreneurs that I'm teaching? Like, how can I teach them to enter into this world? And while I'm looking at that, of course, that's when NFTs kind of started breaking out into the world. And at first I looked at it and went, this is kind of clicky. And I still remember, and I'm still kicking myself for this, man. I still remember looking at Bored Ape Yacht Club going, that'll never catch on. I don't need one of those, and now I'm going, I really should have grabbed 10 of them.
Exactly. But it's always with hindsight, right? It's the same with Bitcoin and the same with Ethereum.
But the thing that really made me excited about NFTs was the potential for them and the potential for entrepreneurs. I've seen so many different use cases where they can help you to drive the right behavior with your potential market or your clients, or they can help you to bootstrap or boot fund a project, or they can just get you to engage in a different kind of way. I'm really excited about the potential for not-for-profits and charities and social good, and I'm working with a number of different businesses now to help them to bring NFTs to life for them. So it was a no-brainer for me to enter into that space. That was something I was very passionate about and wanted to move into. But that being said, now bringing on board the bigger team, that's when we start going, because our initial plan was, right, we want to basically give you these companion NFTs, nice and simple, right? And that'll help to rewire your brain. And then we thought, actually, we want to kind of celebrate everybody together. So let's get together with an in real life party. And we'll do this online, actually. We'll do a virtual Christmas party every year. And I know we'll make it so big that actually we're going to break the Guinness Book of World Record for the largest online Christmas party. So that was the plan. That's now expanded into, actually, we own islands in the metaverse. We're building out, so we've got spaces there for everyone.
Of course.
But then bringing on board the rest of the team, we started questioning, how do we add more value? And how do we constantly serve the people that hold our ninjas? How do we make it that they want to hold on to these things? And that's when the in real life stuff started to combine with the Web3 stuff, where I realized, one of my day jobs is I run a podcast called Chasing the Insights, which is one of the largest podcasts in the world right now. And I'm constantly interviewing experts in all elements of things that can help you. For example, it's for entrepreneurs, but I talk to experts on resilience, on sleep, on dealing with imposter syndrome, on
Yoga, I saw,
yeah,
nutritionist. It's
exactly,
really a
exactly.
lot. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but these are
Great.
all things that we think, imagine now if we can set up a ninja academy where everyone that holds one of these ninjas, every ninja in our family essentially, gets access to these experts. And these are some of the best people in the world. So I thought, you know what? I'm not sure they'll be on board with this, but I'll ask them anyway. So I went out to my network and said, look, who's going to be willing to participate in this and to be able to do classes and train some of these people so that they can be more resilient, so they can be more courageous, they can be more compassionate, be more self-sacrificial. And it was a resounding yes across the board. Everyone's really excited about that. So that's when we get to add some real life value to it. And then, of course, from that, because we're giant nerds, comic books, figurines, merchandise, all the cool stuff that we want to get our hands on.
Yeah,
And the decision for that was really simple, by the way. It wasn't a case of going, how can we add more value to our audience? It was really, I want these. I want my comic books. I want my merchandise. I want my figurines and things. So we're going to make it for everybody. So
great, man.
Yeah, so definitely looked at multiple different ways we can add value.
Yeah, so it's gonna be, it started really funny, with a good story about Christmas and about the beliefs, and I can tell you a lot about Christmas because Santa Claus is based on a Dutch figure called Sinterklaas.
Yes,
but that's maybe for another time. But and we always deal with the same, like with our kids. There's an age that you have to say, okay, maybe we lied a little bit to you. Maybe the gifts were from another guy.
Yeah, I know.
But the same principles apply. Thou shalt not, and only if you listen and if you walk in line, then you're rewarded with presents. So it's more like. It's a very negative way of rewarding kids, and I fully agree with you. It
also teaches them. It's like I did this with my children growing up. So when my kids started going to primary school, they started getting taught things like the rights of the child and things like that. You as a child have rights. So I countered that and I said to my kids, look, this is going to be controversial, and people are going to disagree with me on that, and that's absolutely fine. Trust me, my kids are amazing.
Yeah.
But one of the things I said to them is because my daughter came home and she joked with me one day and she said, look. Oh, Dad, no, you can't. That's my human right. And I said, actually, do you know what? You don't have rights. And this is controversial, but hear me out. I said, you have responsibilities. And I said, and as a family, as your father, I have a responsibility to make sure that you are fed, you are sheltered, you are safe, you have the opportunity to thrive, you have the opportunity to grow and to take risks and do all the things that are going to help you to get by in life. My responsibility is that, just as your responsibility as part of this family is to make sure you're doing your part, you're doing your chores and all these kind of things. So it was a different perspective for me. Instead of going, because if you start looking at things like rights, and I'm not anti-rights here, but if you start looking at it from that perspective, or behave yourself, then what you're saying to kids is do the bare minimum. What we're really saying to them is we want you to succeed, and to succeed, you're going to have to push yourself, and you're going to have to strive to be a better human being. It's as simple as that. So we're really passionate about that. In fact, the entire team, it's been probably one of the best parts about this project is the team that I've put together, is working with some incredible people. And I've built many teams, many high-performing teams throughout my career. And this is the one I've been the most proud of, because every single one of us have a passion for an element of this. So, for example, our developer, when she came to me, it was so funny. She's like, I don't know anything about NFTs yet. She goes, I've never built one. I've never done a smart contract. I've never done any of this, but I have a background in cybersecurity. And I know I can do this because it's just development work. I mean, duh. And she goes, but I have a passion to keep people safe in this space. And I'm going, well, that's important to us for our community. Then we've got Katie Brinkley, who's an incredible marketer. Her and I speak on stages all over the world. She's going to have a passion to educate people to bring them into this space. And I'm like, well, that's a core element of what we need. Our artist, who's just, honestly, our artist, I have to tell you this, man. Our artist is one of the sweetest people ever, but she couldn't do art for like a few days because she got a bee sting on her fingers. And we're like, how did you get a bee sting on your finger? She was coming home one day, saw a bee on the ground with all these ants attacking it, and went, no. And she's trying to save the bee, taking the ants off it, and the bee stung her. And we're like, you don't ever change. You're amazing. But she has a passion for people to want to better themselves and to break through some of their past traumas and their past issues and things. So when you combine all of the different passions that each of us have to make this world a better place, then this together as a project becomes something that's very personal for all of us. And it becomes something
Absolutely.
that,
Yeah.
like we're here, like, let's get real. If you're launching an NFT project, you want to make money off that, because you can't actually succeed if you don't make money. You need the money to be able to pay for the things that you want to achieve in there and the change that you want to make.
Yep.
But when your focus is mostly on making an impact in this world, then it becomes a very satisfying venture indeed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's also what we do. And but it's
Yeah.
not about Cryptopia. This is about this topic. And you triggered me. You have also a session with Chasing the Insights about the imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And when you talk a lot about passion, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people all over the world have passions, and they're in the wrong jobs or in the wrong positions, doing the things they don't like, but they want to make the switch. But then there's a nagging voice in their head, like, oh no, I can't, and oh
Yeah,
maybe.
I'm
So
well familiar with that nagging voice. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah. I look at it this way, man, because I did this with Signa. So I just come off the back of selling my largest ever startup, right? It was a multi-8-figure exit after about probably 3.5 years of extreme stress and anxiety. But I left there saying, look, I want to spend more time with my family. So I actually wanted to get a corporate job, do something a bit different. And at the same time, we had all these people wanting to buy our business. So it worked perfectly. But then when I joined Signa Insurance, I was there for 5 years, and on paper, it is the dream job. I'm the chief marketing officer of a Fortune 100 company. It's a job most marketers would literally kill for.
absolutely, yeah.
And I, the pay was ridiculous. The bonuses were, oh, let's go buy a house with our bonus kind of thing. I got to work on some incredible projects. I got the results. We doubled the revenue of a Fortune 100 company in the time I was there, mostly off the back of the stuff that I was doing.
Nice.
So that got recognized internally, and it certainly got recognized externally as well. So like I said, traveled the world, got recognized by Adobe as one of the top 50 marketers, published my book, sitting in my big office with my Madman style whiskey cabinet. I was quite proud of that cabinet. Madman style whiskey cabinet, looking out over the harbor at all the cruise ships coming in, going, I'm going on you next, and then you, and then you, and then realized I was utterly miserable. And I felt really guilty about that. I genuinely did. I felt really ashamed of the fact that most people would kill for this job. I had the job and didn't want the job. It made me feel ungrateful. And I had to understand why that was. And it was probably for what most of you are thinking in your jobs, and that is that you are unfulfilled. And you're sitting there going, I don't enjoy my time here. I want to be doing something that is something I'm passionate about, or something that I really want to, make my mark with. So for me, it was a relatively easy decision. Even though it's a hard decision, it's the easiest hard decision I've ever made. It was like, I'm going to leave there. The goal was, by the way, to leave and become a full-time author. When you have ADHD, do not become a full-time author on one book. It'll drive you mental really quick. I lasted about a week before.
That's good advice. Okay.
Yeah. But the other thing is that fear is really interesting, because part of that fear, there's two elements at play here. One of the parts of the fear is we as human beings have this weird thing where we feel like we have to be tied to our own decisions. And by that, I mean, we go, if I leave my job to pursue this and it doesn't fail, it doesn't work and it fails, I'm a failure. Rather than going, if I make a decision to leave this job and it doesn't work, I can now just make a different decision.
Exactly.
And then I can make a different decision. Like you have the ability to make decisions.
Yes.
But the other thing that we need to realize is that imposter syndrome is at play here. And to understand imposter syndrome is to beat imposter syndrome. In fact, I say to people, don't even try and beat it. You know what? Embrace imposter syndrome. And what I mean by that is when you understand what it's doing, right? Imposter syndrome is simply a defense mechanism in your brain. It's your brain going, hey, guess what? You're way out of your comfort zone right now. You are doing something brand new that you've never done before. And I want to keep you safe. So I want to wrap you back up over here in your comfort zone where it's nice and safe, and I know I can protect you. So that's all your brain is doing. And the way it does that is it motivates you through fear. It says, hey, guess what? If you're doing this and you fail, everyone's going to know you don't know what you're doing. Everyone's going to know you're making this up as you go along. Except let's put a different lens on it and understand the reality here, which is, yes, you are making it up as you go along. Yes, you don't have a clue what you're doing because you've never done this before. And that's A-okay. That is absolutely fine. And here's the other thing. you're exactly where you're supposed to be when you're outside your comfort zone, because that's where breakthrough happens. That's where success happens. That's where growth happens.
Yeah.
You need to be outside your comfort zone to be able to go to another level.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
all imposter syndrome is, and we have to reframe this, all imposter syndrome is your brain going, hey, Vince, guess what? What? You're exactly where you need to be right now. And when we can
That's a
understand
nice
that,
one.
it helps
Yeah.
us to be able to deal with that. So
Yeah.
now that's still not a magic formula for suddenly, oh, you know what? I feel fine now. I'll go do that.
No, exactly.
You still got to deal with that, and you
Yeah.
still got to remind yourself of why you're doing what you're doing. But it's
Yeah.
an important step.
Yeah. And I think you were lucky, and well, I can also speak for myself. I'm also lucky that I have a different, you know, I'm wired differently, same as you.
Yeah.
And I don't care, you know.
I
It's something
think
new.
all
I
entrepreneurs
don't
are
care.
wired
And
differently.
I like it. I
Yeah,
embrace the challenge and just do it.
Yeah.
And I know I didn't do it before, but hey, hell, what's the worst thing that can happen in your life? The really, really
That's it.
worst thing?
Yeah.
Nothing.
I'll tell you now, just about every major entrepreneur has been probably bankrupt at some point in their life, has
Yep.
failed multiple times in their life. In fact, it's one of the things that really irritates me is whenever you're talking with entrepreneurs, like in a lot of cases, people go, oh, and you succeeded in this, succeeded in that, and how did you do this? We ask them about how they got the success.
Yeah.
We don't talk about, oh, actually behind that one decision, because usually success is wrapped around a decision, you know?
Yeah.
So I made this decision to move into this area and it was massively successful. And everyone goes, oh, see, they know what they're doing and they made a decision. What they don't realize is to get to that decision,
leading up to
there
that,
were
yeah,
50
exactly.
failures.
Exactly.
You know, so I think we should talk about that a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's also inherent to a specific culture, right? So if your culture or your business culture is not about failures and not about learning, or maybe it is about learning, but not the failure type of learning, right? And it's indeed sort of personally at some point. So you are a failure because you failed with that idea or that decision. Yeah, then the people feel very uncomfortable to take the risk.
Well, we tie our identity to what we're doing, which is not necessarily the right thing to do. You know, instead of tying our identity to the fact I'm working on an NFT project, instead tie your identity to why you're doing what you're doing. Because, and I'll give you a good example of this. Okay, so for me, one of my whys. So I set a whole pile of goals for myself every year, right? And back in my last year at Cigna, I started the year by going, here's my top 25 goals I'm going to achieve this year. But one of the things I realized is I can't just write down that goal because goals can sometimes shift and change. So I need to write down why that goal is there.
Good,
And one of them was around visibility. And I thought, right, I want to make sure that I'm working on my personal brand. I'm constantly, visible, etc. So to do that, I knew I had to get on stages. So I set my goal as I need to be on 5 major conferences throughout the year and another probably 10 smaller ones or something like that. Now, the difference there, though, is you get to a point in the year and you realize, in fact, I did this. I spoke at 3 conferences in a row and realized that every speaker at each of these conferences was exactly the same. And to make it even worse, they all looked like me. They were all middle-aged white guys. And I'm like, something's not right here. And I remember talking with a friend of mine based up in Auckland. She's an Indian-born New Zealander who's way smarter than I am. Honestly, she's an incredibly smart woman in the marketing space. But she couldn't get booked on any stage because she apparently didn't have the reputation that I had. But in reality, I feel like there was a lot of gender and racial-based profiling that happened there, or she's not going to be a draw card because she's an Indian woman or something along those lines. So I got asked to speak at a conference, and now normally I would say yes to this because it would fit within my goal, but I realized my goal is visibility and my personal brand. If I'm going to speak on that stage, that's going against what I'm trying to build as a personal brand. So I turned around and I said to them, yes, I will speak at your conference, and yes, I will take your fee. But no, I will not get up on stage, and no, you won't pay it to me. You're going to pay it to her instead, and you're going to let her get up on stage and speak. And I just thought, right, I'll just try something like this, see if it works. I didn't think it would work, to be honest. I thought they would turn around and say no, and they just went, well, they kind of did. They turned around and said, well, that's not how it works. And I said, well, it does now. If you ever want me to speak, you're going to do this, And then they agreed to it in the end. Now, the criteria I gave them was they couldn't tell her that I did this, because I didn't want it to be about me. It had to be about her, and it had to feel like it was earned because it should be earned. She's brilliant, Now they broke that. They didn't pay her exactly what they were going to pay me, which was a bit irritating. But then again, I know I'm more experienced in that case. But they did pay her. They did get her on stage, and they told her. So The interesting byproduct of all of that is that started to spread with people going, oh, hey, he did this, which, by the way, had an incredible effect on the rest of the white males that were speaking at these things, because they turned around and said, oh, yeah, I'm giving up my space on that too. Thanks, Vince. Under their breath, they're going, you dick. Like, so, but it achieved the goal that I had throughout the year because I understood why I was doing the goal. The same with moving into NFTs. If you're doing an NFT project and maybe it doesn't mint out, maybe it doesn't succeed. If you tie your identity to the success of that, you're going to feel like a failure.
Yeah.
But if you tie your identity to, I'm trying something new to get an outcome, and that outcome I want to achieve is changing the world in this way, then when that doesn't work, you try something different to try and achieve the same thing. So very important step, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what we do. So we started 2016 with 2017 with the ICO, and in the end we failed. And now then the NFTs came in, and we thought, hey, that's another opportunity to do the same objective, chase the same objective, and we're in it again. So exactly. I fully agree with it. And start with the why. The book, I think you recommend it to everyone, right? So you really live and breathe it. Very cool. Talking about your book, and you also said in our email communication stream that becoming a bestseller is not that hard.
It's not.
I'm very, very curious. Well, I think the listeners are also very curious. Can you explain a little bit on that?
Well, okay, there's multiple aspects to this. So the actually becoming a published author is not as hard as people think. That's the first step of this, because whenever anyone thinks of becoming an author, and by the way, becoming an author is in fact, I would say it is the best step that any entrepreneur can take to become positioned as a thought leader. Because I'm telling you now, like, anyone that sees you're a published author, whether you're a bestseller or not, if you're a published author, immediately in the back of their mind, they go, oh, this person must know what they're talking about. And even knowing that, I still do the same thing. Like, anyone pitching on my show, if they've got a book, I go, oh, they must know what they're talking about. And they go, wait a minute, I literally teach this stuff. What's going on here, Vince? But there's a reason for that, because our brain looks at it and goes, this is a huge undertaking, right? Becoming an author is a very big step, which means if you've taken the step and you've done the groundwork for that, that must mean that what you have to say is important enough to do that. So that kind of makes sense to me when you think about it. But the other thing is, when we look at that, we think, wow, that's overwhelming. And most people go, oh, I can't write 60,000 words for a book. But the thing is, there are multiple ways you can become an author, and there's multiple ways you can become a best-selling author, and they don't have to be that complex. Like, yes, you can write your memoir, you can write your I focus purely on nonfiction. Obviously I'm in the business space, the entrepreneur space, but you can easily write a book about your methodologies and things like that as well. That requires an amount of work. But if you do this every single day, I'm telling you, if you write every single day, you'll be surprised how quickly you have enough for a book.
That's a good
But the other thing is, there are different types of ways you can do this. You can do what's called a low content book. And I'll give you an example. One of my other books I've published is called 5-Word Affirmations. And it really talks about my journey into affirmations, because one of my clients came to me and said, oh, you should be doing affirmations, Vince. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that rubbish. Like, I don't have time for that. Now, I've got more important things to do than stand in the mirror and go, you generate wealth, Vince. You find wealth easy, and blah, blah, blah. And they turned around. They actually called me on it and said, look, you talk about experimentation all the time, but you've made a conclusion without trying something. And I went, oh, touche, I've taught them well. So I said, okay, I'm going to go on a journey. I'm going to do 30 days of affirmations. I'm going to journal what's happening when I'm doing these affirmations, right? I'm going to monitor what's happening in me and prove you wrong, essentially. And then I'm going to, while I'm doing that, I'm going to study the neuroscience behind it to understand why affirmations may or may not work. That 30 days has now turned into 2.5 years, and I'm still doing it every single day. And the reason is it really works. It genuinely surprised me, but it really does work. So this book is about 30 pages of me talking about the journey, talking about the neuroscience behind it, just breaking down some of the basic concepts of that. And then the rest of the book is literally the affirmations that I was using, that just so happened to be, the majority of them were 5 words long. So I call it 5-word affirmations. So every page is 5 words. So you can see you can quickly fill a book, which is still a reputable book, which is a book that I'm getting a lot of praise for, but it required, like, I wrote most of the affirmations in a day. And then I did one with my wife called Entrepreneurial Haiku. That took a few more days than that. But again, it's a low content book. Then you have repurposed books, which are where entrepreneurs often are writing content all the time. So they're writing classes, they're writing content, they're writing blog posts and things like that as
Mm-hmm.
well. What they don't realize is often what's sitting in front of them, the stuff that's already in their hand, is the content for their book. And I do a lot of work like this with people, a lot of work with podcasters actually, that a lot of them ask the same question in every single show. I do this with my show. I always ask, what are 3 practical tips?
Yeah.
Well, when you're 260 episodes into your podcast, you've got 260 entrepreneurs giving you 3 practical tips.
That's a lot of information.
5 books worth of information,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah.
So there's a way you can repurpose that and just get somebody to edit that for you into a book format. And then there's collaboration books where you can team up with, 9 other entrepreneurs or 14 other entrepreneurs. And all you have to write, 3,000 words, which most people can write in a weekend. So there's a lot of ways you can become an author.
Interesting.
But then the best-selling part of it really is there's a lot of tactics that people don't think of. Most people just put a book out there. They put it on Amazon. They probably self-publish it, put it on Amazon and go, ta-da, and
Here
5 people buy your book.
Exactly.
Yeah. And usually in a conversation with people, they go, oh, I'm an author. And you go, yeah, it's on the shelf behind me. You're like, oh my goodness. Like, don't waste your books. Make them work for you. So I teach people a lot of ways to become a best-selling author. And a lot of it's around your launch tribe and things like that as well, and doing a bit of hard work there. But the other thing too is it's around understanding how Amazon works. And secretly, I wrote a script like, oh my goodness, 5 years ago, I think it was, that I probably shouldn't say this too loudly, that especially scrapes Amazon every 2 hours and looks at every different category in the nonfiction sections and works out what are the shifts, what are the changes, what are the new books that are in there, what are the positions of those books based on the AISN, and then what are the best sellers within that category. So it uses all of that, throws it into AI, spits it all out and says, hey, guess what? These are the categories you need your book in if you wanted the best chance of being a best-selling author. Yeah. And running this script, I have found one of my clients had the dream one day where we went to go and put their book on Amazon. And when you go to publish on Amazon, by the way, you're allowed to choose 2 categories. But what most people don't know is you're actually allowed 10 categories. This is just a process you have to go through. So we were going through that process. We ran the software and we looked and we're like, you've got to be kidding me. There were 2 brand new categories that had just been released that nobody knew about really. And we managed to put her book into there. She sold like 2 copies of her book and was considered a bestseller. It was ridiculous, man. So it's not as hard as people think. There are strategies and there are ways to do this.
Oh, great. Nice story. Very nice story. Hey, and about your podcast. So Chasing the Insight. So people listening, go check it out. It's really, really nice and very diverse. How do you get your guests? Is it like people you meet in real life, people you stumble upon, or how does it work for you?
Initially, yes. So when I first launched the podcast, that was my biggest fear actually, is how do I get the right people? So I tapped into my own network and said, look, I want to interview you all. And by the way, that was a mixture. I had some really good guests. I had some really bad guests. I have some that will never show the light of day. Turns out not everyone's good as on a podcast. But then as I got better, I also learned how to open them up more and make them sound amazing. But then I would actually use it as a way to connect with new people, because funny enough, when you've got a podcast, being able to just reach out to someone and say, hey, I would love to interview you for my podcast. They go, oh, yeah, I'd love to be on a podcast. That's cool. So it was actually quite easy to start to find people. And then you get to the critical mass moment. And for me, I think once I hit the top 10% of podcasts in the world, that was when suddenly all of the people started coming to me. And now I'm in the top 5%. I get probably about 50 pitches every week for people wanting to be on the show. So for me, I'm very particular about who I let in front of my audience. It's really important to me that they fit, that they're purpose driven, that they're heart centered, that they actually fit with my DNA and my audience's DNA. So 99.9% of those get rejected. But I do 3 episodes a week. So I interview 3 different people a week.
Wow. Okay, man. That's a lot.
Yeah. Oh, and I run a second podcast called the NFT Ninjas with Katie Brinkley. It's part of our Christmas Ninja project. We run a second one. We do 5 days a week. So now I'm doing 8 episodes a week for my podcast.
Okay.
I love it though. Yeah.
But it comes really naturally to you, probably. So you talk about
I used to work on radio. Yeah. I was an on-air announcer at our biggest radio station here for a few years, actually. And thoroughly enjoyed it. It was one of the best jobs ever. It's just terrible pay. So now I get the opportunity to kind of relive those days doing
Yeah,
podcasting,
your own. Yeah.
and I get good money for it. So yeah,
Okay, great. Well, Laudi, that's our our community
Absolutely.
manager, and it was his idea to start a podcast in the first place. So the CryptopiaCast. So
Very
I
wise
think it's
man.
very
Yep.
wise. It's also very fun. And you're right, because I have some people on my list that normally or usually they probably are not going to respond, but if I can throw in the podcast, be my guest, and I'm going to interview you, it changes a bit, it shifts a bit there.
I'll give a little hack that I did that I didn't think would work, to be honest, but it really did work way better than I thought. I set up a public Twitter list. So just a public Twitter list called Dream Podcast Guests. And then put something on there just saying, these are the people I'd love to get as a guest on my show. And then I'll just go through and add these people before I reach out to them. Because chances are, and this has happened multiple times, even some of the bigger names in the industry, their team, because usually it's not them on social, their team saw it and then reached out to the person and said, hey, someone says they want you on as a guest on their show. And they go, okay, why not? Let's make this happen. So yeah, you'll be surprised.
Okay, thank you, Vince. This is what we're gonna do. Absolutely.
Yep.
Cool.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, Vince, it's. I look at my clock, and I'm afraid I have to say we have to wrap it up.
Not a problem.
I really enjoyed it, and well, maybe we can do episode 2, because I think we have a lot of there are a lot of things I think I have a click with you about certain topics, and I would love to talk about it maybe in the future in another episode. But so far, thank you very much for your time being here. I hope it's because this is my first recording, and I hope everything went well, and let's see the results. And
mate, you're an outstanding host. I love it.
So okay, thank you very much.
It's been an absolute privilege being on the show. Seriously,
thank you very much, Vince. So take care, and hope to talk to you soon.
Awesome. Cheers.
Okay, bye-bye.